This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com. We cover all areas of coffee, and one of the things I like to do is visit cafes in whatever city I go to. And probably this year, between Europe and the States, I've been to over 500 cafes with my wife. And I go to a lot of cafes I like, but every once in a while I go to a cafe that really stands out, and that is the case with the cafe owned by Travis Clifton. Mod Cup, MOD Cup, and it's in Jersey City, New Jersey. And by the way, I was born in Jersey City. I hadn't been there in over 20 years, and the city is going through an enormous renaissance, as is Brooklyn and some other areas, because it's New York City. The influence and the people that work there are moving into this area. A lot of hip stuff going on, a lot of great stuff going on there, and I love the cafe. So, Travis, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on and speak with me
Absolute
today.
pleasure. And I'm happy that you enjoyed your experience with us. It's wonderful to hear.
Right. Now, I got to say, you don't have a Jersey City accent like me. Where are you from
No.
originally?
I'm from the United Kingdom, mate.
Okay, and what brought you to Jersey City?
Originally, I moved to New York, following a woman who I got married to, had a kid with, and then once the kid came into the equation, New York was a little too small, so we shifted across the river to Jersey City, mate.
Right. And again, for those of you that have never been to Jersey City, go to Jersey City, go to Hoboken, go to some of these areas right outside of this city. I think a lot of the young creative energy is leaving Manhattan because Manhattan's too expensive, and it's
I
being
would agree.
found in these areas and in Brooklyn and Queens and up in the Bronx now as well. When and how did you get into coffee?
Well, I wasn't from a coffee background. It's all being British. I primarily drank tea and understood my nation's influence in the drinking of hot beverages was primarily in tea. But yeah, I fell into coffee really when I was living next door to a coffee roaster in Toronto, who basically opened my eyes to what coffee can and perhaps should be. And then from him sort of getting me into coffee, I think the first coffee he gave me actually was a Balinese natural, and I was like, Jesus, mate, this tastes of strawberries. I've never had coffee taste like this in my life. How is that? What have you flavoured it with? To which then, he explained that coffee is one of the most complex fruits on the planet, and the bean is actually the seed, and when it's all of that, and that really stoked an interest in me. So much so that I left the job that I was doing at the time, which I was an art dealer, took all my savings with my 12-month-old kid and ploughed it all into opening a roastery in Jersey City.
Wow. And who did you train under? Were you working as a barista or roaster elsewhere? And that's another
Oh,
question.
mate,
Yeah.
everything was hands-on with me. I went to a coffee course at William Booth in Marin County, San Francisco, where I met who will become a partner in the company, a roaster from the Midwest,
Uh-huh.
who was looking to leave his roastery that he was been apprenticing under for a while and move into a new gig, and I managed to persuade him to fill his car and head our way.
Well, I believe you have 3 locations in Jersey City now. Is that right?
Yes,
And
yes.
what was the location I went to? What area is that considered?
Did you go to the one on Palisade Avenue?
I went to the one really close to where you go into. You were very close to Hoboken, and I think there was a park across the street.
Oh
Uh,
yes, that's the one on Palisade Avenue. That's a really small cafe, but really cute and we hope well designed. Yeah, that's the first cafe that we opened. Initially, we started on the streets, mate.
right.
We had a little espresso cart that we dragged out from a garage where we were illegally roasting coffee. We're legal now. And we used to drive down and set up a little cafe on the side of the street with a Liverpool espresso machine. With the money we made there, we opened that cafe that you went to, which is in Jersey City Heights.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then we, with our second location, we got an investor into us, and we opened up a fully formed roastery and cafe, which is in Journal Square. And then we'd always were planning and having built it was originally built in 1969, but having an old vintage truck restored into an espresso bar with a roaster on it. And that took us probably 3 years to get done, all in all. Once we'd finished it, the Hyatt Hotel approached us and said, "We love it. We want it on our driveway in Jersey City," which was an exchange place, Jersey City.
Right. Yeah,
And then
right.
very quickly, Matt Calley, the large real estate developers, said to us, look, we adore this. We want this as a permanent cafe inside of one of our financial centres. So that truck was pulled indoors and now hasn't turned over or moved for close to 2 years now, which is ironic because it took us 3 years to get it.
Right. What year did you open up in Jersey City? What year was that?
4 years ago.
So 4 years ago. What was the specialty coffee scene in Jersey City? Was there much going on at that time, or were you one of the first?
There was nothing going on. And here's where it was really interesting to me as a salesman. I'm from a background of sales.
Yeah.
I had no idea about coffee other than I drank it to get up in the morning. I had no idea about complex flavors. I had no idea about it being a fruit.
Right.
None of that even contemplated in my mind. What I realized quickly was that this was so much information about this delicious beverage that was the second most drunk beverage on the planet after water, but yet no one knew anything about it. And particularly in my neighborhood where I live, Jersey City, Hoboken, all of that area there, they had nothing, no third wave specialty coffee whatsoever. And I saw it as a great challenge because, look, historically this area was a large immigration of Italians and Greeks, and therefore they brought that propensity for a little further dark roast and eliminating natural flavors. So I saw it as a nice challenge, really. And that's why we opened it.
Yeah, and I know that area. I was born in Jersey City, grew up in North Bergen, which actually is connected to Jersey City. And also Italian immigrants. I had 17 cousins living on the same side of the street.
Oh, it's very multicultural. Completely.
So I'm very happy Specialty Coffee has found.
And it's actually really interesting that everybody that we spoke to in the first 12 months of us opening here 4 years ago, well, like, you guys, you're in the wrong spot. You guys should be in Brooklyn. To which, I was like, why? And they were like, well, because this is a Brooklyn thing. I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a Brooklyn thing at all. It's, just because not so many people wear skinny jeans over it, don't mean they're going to buy decent coffee.
Right. And did you spend a lot of time in the early days educating people about coffee? Did people come in and say, hey, listen, like your experience, all of a sudden, hey, this is, I used to just grab this caffeinated stuff and put milk and sugar in it. Now I'm actually tasting the fruit of coffee, the strawberry taste.
Yeah.
This taste.
And we still do. We still do. It's a big proponent of what we do is the educational aspect of the business. It's what I find the most pleasure in, if I'm quite honest with you.
Right. And a question I have, and one of the issues that comes up, especially with independent cafes, is the training program, the preparation of the barista. Because a lot of places I'll go in and it's terrific if one barista is doing it, but if another barista is doing it, it's not so good. I noticed in your place it looked like everybody really knew what they were doing. I had a great cup of coffee. It was the right temperature. It was properly poured. Everything about it, the milk was carefully chosen in the milk drinks, and it was when you hire somebody.
Well, that makes me happy to hear that because we do spend a lot of time training our own staff. But
to me, anybody out there that's thinking of opening a cafe, please don't do it unless you have a good training program, or you just hire somebody. Oh, I have 5 years experience as a barista, so we'll hire you. Well, where did they have that experience? Did they get good habits, bad habits? Please.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because here's the deal. When we first started, I was looking to hire, baristas, people who could drive, as I used to put it, just because it's what I need. I need you to be able to make a cappuccino or a latte So I was looking to hire baristas. What I found very quickly was, this side of the river, it's challenging to find baristas.
Right.
They all live the other side of the river
right.
because they tend to be musicians or artsy kind of people. That's not to say they don't exist in Jersey City.
Right.
They do. It's just finding baristas that were also in that field was challenging. And what I also realized then, that when I was hiring baristas from other areas of the tri-state region, and they were coming in with their learned habits, I couldn't teach them how to sell. I'd rather have someone that knows how to sell and teach them how to make coffee than someone that knows how to make coffee and try and teach them how to sell.
So when you hire somebody, what you're looking for is personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I see. And the example I would use, the analogy I would use is, if I'm a tennis coach, would I rather have somebody that's never played tennis or somebody that's played tennis for 5-10 years and learned it all the wrong way, had all bad habits? I'll take the person that is enthusiastic to learn. And I can start from scratch. Okay, so getting back to this, what you said. I wanted to throw one thing out. You're from England. You guys are really catching up because Dale Harris last year, in 2017, was the world barista champion, and he's out of London. So,
Yep.
great baristas everywhere, and certainly he speaks well of what's going on in England now, even though it's
Well,
still
let
a
me
lot of
actually
tea.
say
Yeah,
something about the UK and coffee, if I
yeah,
may, very quickly. You know, our name of our company is called Mod Cup, M-O-D, standing
right.
for modern. That stands, of course, for what we constitute as being modern coffee, and that is coffee served within a maximum of 3 weeks from its roast date, right? We define that as modern coffee. Freshly roasted coffee, essentially. However, there's also sub-branding in our name. As you can hear from my accent, I'm English. Most people think that the English are responsible for the distribution of tea around the world. But if you look at the history of coffee, the UK was one of the first major players, along with the Dutch, in coffee. You know what I mean? Back in the mid-1600s, there were more coffee shops in the city of London alone than the entire world combined. We were a coffee nation.
Wow.
Coffee turned us from a nation of boozers into the financial capital of the world. You know, the Lloyd's, the insurance house of London, used to be a coffee house, as did the stock exchange. We were a nation that drank 10 gallons of beer a day. And then when coffee came, we became a financial center.
Wow. See,
So
listen.
the point I bring,
Yeah, go ahead.
the point I bring back to the mod thing is that died a death at the end of the 1600s as you know, the empire grew, and we realized it was much easier to grow tea than it was coffee, and therefore replaced Indian plantations with tea, and India became a tea nation, when in fact, if you look again at the history of coffee, it's one of the important players in the distribution of coffee around the world, right? The mods, who were a group of young kids in the late 50s, early 60s,
Right.
influenced by the beatniks of San Francisco and the espresso culture of Italy, hence they drove Vespas, Lambrettas, and wore suits, started getting back into coffee. And as I said, like, it's a throwback to that 60s thing that allows us to play with music branding too.
Travis, I see a book there. I think that's a great story. Hey, look, I'm always trying to learn, and this is all new information to me. I like that. A number of people that listen in are people that maybe have in the back of their mind, hey, I'd like to start a cafe sometime. I'd like to open a place somewhere in the world. What advice do you give to them? What if you were advising somebody, hey, I have a little bit of knowledge, I want to learn more, but I want to open a cafe. What advice would you give them? How do they go about it?
Oh, Jesus. I would. The advice would be to do it, mate. I've heard so many people talk. I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, but then present themselves with so many objections that they can't overcome that stops them doing it. Primarily, a lot of those are legalities of things, and you know, I just say, look, Richard Branson in his autobiography says, do it first, ask for forgiveness later.
Right. And I've also heard people
it.
say have at least 1 year of working capital, because you might not be making money right off the
Sure.
bat.
Yes, for 100%, yeah. I didn't pull a wage out of the company, mate, for 2 years.
Good. That's what you have to do. Now, okay, so getting back to the barista, how important is it for you? You mentioned looking somebody with a personality, that the barista is interactive with the customer and also willing to educate those customers that want to be educated. In other words, some people come in and they want a coffee, they want to run, they don't want to talk, they don't have
Sure.
time. Other people
Yep.
come in and they'll start asking questions, they want to learn a little bit more. Do you train your baristas to be interactive, to feel they do have a responsibility to educate as well as pour drinks?
I think it's, again, the paramount thing. Almost more important than being able to steam the milk correctly for me is that. Now, when I say they should be able to sell, what I'm referring to in sell is not necessarily product, but sell information, things that will make that person come back to our cafe.
So you do that.
It's paramount.
Mm-hmm.
It's paramount. And in fact, we designed a menu so that when you walked in, our baristas are all trained to ask you questions, because we believe that we live in a binary world, right? Everything's either 0 or 1. We think that everything's like 2 answers. So when you walk into a mod cup with the idea, again, that this is modern coffee, you'll be asked questions that the barista has specifically been trained to ask you to get you to the drink you want. So, example, you walk in and immediately the first thing they'll say is, hi, how you doing? But after that, they're going to say, what are you in the mood for today, coffee or tea? 1 or 2 answers. You say coffee, he says hot or cold. 1 or 2 answers. You say hot, he says drip or espresso. 1 or 2 answers. You say drip, he says with milk or without milk. You say with milk, he's got a coffee for you that balances with milk well. You say black, he's going to say something classic or exotic. The whole thing is built around interaction.
Do you sell much pour over where you are?
Okay, so when we started, we did almost everything by pour-over. Here's my thoughts on pour-overs now. I love the theatricality of a pour-over, and it will engage someone into the coffee-making process. It was great 5 years ago when you didn't see that many people doing it. I think now that every cafe does pour-overs, and they've become blasé about it, the consumer base. I also don't think, by the way, that it produces a cup of coffee as good as a batch brewer does, unless the barista that's making that pour-over coffee is very technically trained.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is you're dealing with 24 grams of coffee with a pour-over as opposed to 210 grams on a Fedco batch. You've got more coffee, it's going to be more rounded flavors in the final brew, in our opinion. So whilst we do pour-overs and AeroPresses and duos and lots of hand-brewed methods, pour-overs have been dramatically reduced at all three of our coffees.
Do you sell a lot of espresso? Just somebody coming in first? You do. What you don't have any idea in a day if you sell 100 cups, how much of that is what percentage is espresso?
It's going to be about 50%, 60%.
So that's quite high. And then what are your coffee drinking habits? How much do you drink in a day, and how do you prepare it?
Asking a coffee man how many cups of coffee do you drink a day, mate? That's almost impossible to say. Let's just say a lot.
But when you're home, when you're traveling, when you're not at the cafe, and you don't have everything
all right,
available
when I'm
to
at home, I very rarely make coffee. I drink cold brew because generally I'm making a cup of coffee to get caffeinated and get out the door. I've got a child and I don't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time making coffee at home. So it's cold brew generally for me at home, where I take home Kyoto ice strips. If I'm at our cafes, I like to make coffee, and I'm encouraging that our baristas make more and more in this manner, using full immersion methods. We really like the new Fellow Duo. It's a steeper. And the reason I say I like full immersion brewing techniques at our cafes is because we're getting known for buying really good naturals. I mean, that's primarily what we focus on as a green buyer, and a roaster is really exotic, naturally processed coffees. And of course, a full immersion brewing technique is going to bring the body to the equation and the sweetness, which is what you're after out of a natural coffee.
But explain to our listeners that are not familiar with full immersion what you mean by that.
Full immersion means essentially steeping the grinds and water together. Think French press. Whereas a drip coffee, which is a pour-over, is where you put coffee grinds into a paper filter and drip water over the top.
Like a Chemex or a V60.
Like a Chemex or a V60, whereas a full immersion is steeping. And when you steep grinds and water together, you heighten the body of the coffee and the sweetness typically. Whereas a pour-over is going to show you clarity. Well, of course, naturals aren't about clarity. They're about a big smack-in-the-face fruit flavor and a lot of body.
And how much do you do any roasting yourself, or are there other people that work with you that do the roasting? Because you are a roaster as well as a barista, huh?
All the other people around me roast. I don't have time to roast.
And that's
too much stuff going on with business.
Now, if somebody wants to buy coffee from Mod Cup, is there a website you can go to? And I'll post all this up. But go ahead, tell us what it is.
Yes, it's www.modcup.com. Easy as that. MODCUP.com.
And are there a particular country whose bean you prefer? Do you like Costa Rican? Do you like Kenyan? What is
my
best
personal favorite coffees come out of Ethiopia, mate, the birthplace. I've been exploring coffees out of Yemen a lot recently too. Very rustic, and I enjoy those a lot. But Ethiopians seem to be always my go-to. We've just, however, had 2 Centrals arrive into the roastery this week. They're really good, mate. Guatemalan coffee from Huasango. It's got a nice cinnamon sort of vanilla almondy vibe. And then a Colombian coffee, which is a washed coffee, but tastes really fruity, like a natural. Really good, too.
Explain to our listeners washed coffee, what you mean by that.
When I'm saying washed and natural, I'm referring to how the coffee farmer removes the fruit from the bean, or the seed, if you really want to get technically correct about it. They refer to that as processing. And the farmer typically has 1 or 2 options to do that. There's lots of new ways as well, where there's sort of a combination of the two. But essentially what a washed coffee means is the coffee farmer is going to pick the cherries at the height of their ripeness. He's going to remove the skin, leaving the seed with the mucilage and flesh around it. They're going to put those into water baths to wash that off and then pull out those seeds and sun dry them. It leads to a much more sort of a clarity of flavor. If you want your coffees to taste like coffees, look for washed process. When the coffee farmer chooses to naturally process his coffee bean, what he's going to do is essentially pick it at the height of its ripeness and then just take those cherries and limes straight onto sunbeds to dry so that the bean is dried inside of its fruit casing.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as that fruit, dries on, it's going to shrink onto it and impart lots of fruit notes and sweetness into the bean. So if you like really exotic coffees that can taste like blueberry or, chocolate, then those are the coffees for you.
Right. Yeah. Are there people in the world of coffee that you look up to, that you admire, that you aspire to be more like, or take advice from, or even would like to have as a mentor?
Oh, I'm not. Listen, I read tons of things from different people in the industry and enjoy them all. I think that from farmer to barista, we're all along the chain and we're all just trying to do our thing. It's too many to name with regards to influences and people who I look up to, though. I'm in love with coffee, mate, so there's tons of people to shout out to. That would have to be a separate telephone call all in its own
Okay,
right.
another one. But one other thing, one of the things I like to, I'm personally interested in, and as a journalist got me interested in coffee, was not only the coffee itself, but the culture around coffee. What type of culture do you like to create in your cafe? And by the way, if you're in Jersey City, go to Mod Cup. I was immediately taken by the feeling, the vibe I got when I went in there. I really liked it. Hard for me to articulate it. You have to experience it. But is there a particular atmosphere you like to create when you set up a cafe?
Well, it's funny, that specific cafe that you're referring to on Palisades Avenue, it is so small, and it was designed to be very low. And what I mean by that is low seating, so that no one can really work on computers. We don't have Wi-Fi in that cafe, with our mantra being unplug and connect. But there was a reason for that. When that shop was opened, 5 years ago now, 4? That neighborhood didn't have a coffee shop, and people were crying out for a community place to hang out, hence no Wi-Fi.
Right.
As more and more shops have opened in that neighborhood and the community has places to hang out now, it's started to morph more into what I see Mod Cup bars to be, and that's really about coffee, music. Music's a huge part of our branding, like I said, the modernist period of the 60s. You're going to get a lot of music culture in there, a lot of artist culture, generally a lot of political discourse, mate. When you remove the internet from an environment, lots of people talk politics.
That's great. And what do you think about all the consolidation that's going on in coffee now? A lot of these independents being bought out by the bigger entities that are coming into
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The easiest thing to do is jump on your soapbox and say, commercial America's buying the independent spirit of the coffee industry. That's the easiest thing to do, of course, and start laying out accusations that they don't roast like they used to, and now they've got a French roast and a dark roast, and they never used to have that. But look, it's difficult for me to say. I don't actually go and frequent that many other coffee shops to experience what they're offering or the coffees that they showcase these days, mate. I'm just too bloody busy with my own.
Right. No, and I agree. I mean, I've spoken to people from Intelligentsia, from Stumptown, from Blue Bottle, all that have been, purchased up by big conglomerates, and they feel even counterculture, and they're okay with it because they feel they have more money to do their thing as long as the creative end of it is left alone. So advantages and disadvantages. I tend to focus on the independents and give them, there's something special about all the unique environments and approaches to coffee that I like. But I think both will always exist. Those that are,
Yes, I think both will always exist. And look, at the end of the day, if someone came along to me and goes, "Well, I love your brand, here's 20 million," you'd be like, "Yeah, no, sorry, I can't do that. I've got to remain true to my independent spirit." I mean, it's not going to happen, is it? You'd be like, "Yeah, great. Now we can buy lots of unbelievable coffee instead of tiny little bits of unbelievable green coffees." You know what I mean?
Right. No. That's
my menu choice is a lot easier over a 12-month period. Let's put it that way.
Great. A great answer, an honest answer. So, want to wrap it up now, but I mean, if you're in Jersey City, Mod, not Mad Cup, but Mod, MOD Cup,
Correct.
Coffee, Jersey City, and I hope you're opening up more locations, because my experience in New Jersey is it's still a little sparse. It's a little bit harder to find as much specialty coffee as I think you might want to find in the state of New Jersey. But if you go to Jersey City, you're safe. They have 3 locations. Look them up. I'll post all the information up there. Any final words you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us on to chat. It was really nice talking to you, so big thank you. As far as your listeners go, happy holidays, man. Drink coffee, enjoy yourself.
Right.
We have 2 wonderful holiday boxes talking about holidays, by the way. The Origins of Coffee, which is a hurrah, and a Yemenese coffee together, so with a little explanation as to the distribution of coffee way back in the day and how those 2 places were instrumental in its dominance of global drinks. And then we have a really special Ethiopian box set of 2 coffees from the Hambella estate in the Guji region of Ethiopia. Same bean, but different processing on the bean, so you can taste for yourself how much difference the removing of the cherry can make to your final cup. So there's a wet processed coffee and a dry processed coffee. The same coffee bean, one tastes like blueberries and one tastes like Maya lemons, yet it's the same bean.
Great. Sounds like a great gift, either for yourself or a friend. Thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.